welcome back to page 121. Today we're going to talk about Silent Death, Nightbrood. Why Nightbrood? Well, it's one of the earliest offerings from Silent Death. This actually is from the Metal Express. This is before Silent Death, the Next Millennium. But Nightbrood are particularly important in Silent Death. So even though this offering suffers from age, from when it was released in the game, and there's a new one on the horizon, I still feel it's important I go ahead and I include this. So for today, we're going to take a look at Silent Death, the Nightbrood. Okay, the Nightbrood. What the heck are they? Well, they're the boogeymen. They're the bugs that fly around in ships and attack and kill things. You kind of have to think Starship Trooper bugs in spaceships. If you're a Warhammer player, go ahead and think the Tyranids. My son plays Tyranids. They're a very good analog to that. The Tyranids have both starship capabilities and planet side. The Nightbrood, also called the Bugs, they're pretty interesting. The Grubs, another name for them. The idea behind them is that they're out there, they're sleeping, they're waiting. What will awaken them? What will cause them to attack us? Originally, in this expansion for Silent Death, which is from the Metal Express line, the Nightbrood were just another group you had to deal with while you're out in space. So you're flying around in your ship, and suddenly you're attacked, and you don't recognize it. Oh my goodness, that thing looks organic. It's a Nightbrood ship. Oh my gosh, one of the clutches of grubs must have awakened for whatever reason. In the early version of this in Metal Express, the idea was that the grubs were asleep on different worlds and undetected as these worlds were, nearby planets were colonized, or even the world itself was colonized in some cases. And as they were undetected, they just continued sleeping. And the original thought was that, they must communicate with some kind of telepathic thing, and having other sentient creatures so near them is setting up kind of static and messing up their sleep patterns and their communication with each other. Therefore, they have to come out of the ground and swarm and attack the nearby things to quiet the other thoughts, and then they can go back to sleep. That was how they originally in Metal Express. Metal Express, Silent Death, it got revisited, revamped into the Next Millennium, which is the one that was out through the mid to late 90s into the early 2000s, and is hopefully seeing a revival. And in fact, the revival is supposed to start with a new version of Nightbrood, and may or may not include new rule set. I don't know. I hope the rule set stays much the same. I thought they had Silent Death pretty well dialed in. But if there are some improvements to be made, hey, I'm all for it. But in this case, this is the Silent Death Nightbrood box set, and you got a few goodies with this set. I'll turn it over so you can see the back of it. You got some ships, which were, the Squidge, the Lamprey, the Manta, the Remora, the Larva, and the Muskellunge. The idea here is that you would have the little metal ships in there, so you'd have some things to put on the table right away, and you could start playing Nightbrood. This is pretty cool. It's the reason I bought the box set. I liked getting the minis in there. It was a $20 box set, which this was out in the early 90s. That was not cheap for a box set then. But I did get some metal minis in there. Looks like 6 came in the set. I will be showing those later. And I thought, okay, that's pretty cool. And the other thing you got in this set was the expansion for Silent Death rulebook for the Nightbrood. This book came inside and gave you how the Nightbrood played, what different powers their ships had, their torpedoes, that kind of stuff. Because in Silent Death, each of the various expansions would also expand on the weaponry. So very similar to Battletech in that regard. Battletech, you often got new weapons when you got a new house or a new clan. So it's the same kind of thing here. It's another enticement to buy the book. So in this case, Nightbrood came, and then kind of the Metal Express imprint kind of went away and became the New Millennium. And that's the reason why I'm including or is beginning so early with a Silent Death Nightbrood video. The Nightbrood are very important to what happens in the Silent Death. The Silent Death universe is an extension of the Space Master universe, which some of us played in the 80s and 90s. And Space Master was a pretty good universe. The game system was a little overly complicated for me. I tried it a few times. It took too long. You got bogged down too much, I felt, in rules. That could just be me. A lot of people love the system. They published it for years. But they decided they wanted to go ahead and roll their universe into the Metal Express universe, and then ultimately into Silent Death: The Next Millennium. And in this, it was a little too big under Space Master. It was a massive star empire with all these different factions and everything. They wanted to narrow the focus a bit. They did that through the Nightbrood. In Silent Death: The Next Millennium, in the rulebook, they explain in the history that there's a massive civil war going on in the Imperium, and the Emperor unleashes this devastating super weapon that wipes out a good chunk of an enemy fleet. Well, it turns out that it wasn't nearby thoughts that awoke the Nightbrood. It was violence. Violence literally disturbed their sleep, made them wake up cranky, and made them meet violence with violence. The super weapon the Emperor unleashed was enough to draw many, many grub hatchlings from all kinds of different places around the solar system, and they all went for Terra. The Terra system was decimated. The Emperor himself is killed. The fine houses of Terra have to flee, and away they go into non-Terran space, further and further out on the edge, some leaving our galaxy entirely. And that is the setting for Next Millennium. The Nightbrood, for their part, having quelled the violence with violence of their own and calmed everything down, go ahead and they sleep on the worlds they've conquered. They have a little race that they have conquered that makes their little areas for them and can help them build things. So they just establish their colony and then they go back to sleep. So the whole idea of Silent Death is that you have to keep conflicts small. To that end, there are no massive capital ships like in Star Wars or Star Trek. The biggest ship you will get is a Warhound. I'll do a video on the Warhounds down the line. And everything else is important. It's important to have all these snub fighters, gunboats, and Warhounds as your space force. And even at that, you have to keep that kind of limited, because if that exchange gets too large, too many ships involved, it can wake the Nightbrood. Beyond that, in the Next Millennium, the Nightbrood are sometimes just awake because there's been violence there before. They haven't calmed down. So they become a thing you can also encounter as you play the game. I like the Nightbrood. I thought the idea was pretty neat. I think it suffers from, as we say in Warhammer, early Codex syndrome. It came out so early in the Next Millennium that it really wasn't, I don't feel, was developed as some of the other things were. So the idea of a revamp of these guys is pretty exciting to me. Again, I'm hoping the core rules don't change too much. But then I understand it's an imprint that has been out of print for 20 years, and you're trying to sell it to a new generation of gamers. And if there are improvements to be made, hey, what the heck? I, for one, am going to go ahead and give it a try, whatever happens, and we'll see if I like it or don't. Doesn't matter. I'll draw inspiration if nothing else. So now I'm going to show a little bit more of what they did with the Nightbrood. This was the set that came inside, or the book that came inside. And inside you got how the hexes swarmed. They could actually have these little borers that would launch like a missile when they struck your ship, but instead of blowing up your ship, they were little personnel carriers, and they would bore through the side of your ship, and the personnel would dump out and infest your ship and kill you from inside. So the Nightbrood had a lot of neat ideas and a lot of good things going for them. In the Next Millennium, they updated the Nightbrood to the current rule set. Very minor changes, really, and establishing more that they're kind of the boogeyman now. I almost think of them as the space policemen, where if you get out of line, you let the conflict get too big, they're going to come in and they're going to slap you down. So I like the Nightbrood. I like a lot of what they brought to the table. You can see they gave us a lot of counters. A lot of counters that came in this set. I didn't punch them because I had minis. I didn't really want to punch the set if I didn't need to. And then we got all the ship displays. You know what? I'm going to take this off of here and we'll take a better look at the ship displays. So, and you bought these ships the exact same way you bought your others. There's your base point value, and then ready to go to your total point value. And you paid for your pilots and your weaponers and things like that. There's some differences that are brought out in the rule book, but not enough to really warrant much of a conversation here. So they have all kinds of different ships, just like the other houses in Silent Death. Page turnings one-handed can be tough. Okay, there we go. There's another. This guy's got a spore mole launcher, which can just mess up your ship. And I'm not having any luck turning these. There we go. And here's a gunboat, the Muskellunge. This is a bigger one. Gunboats are the intermediate-sized vessels in Silent Death. They have larger crews, and they can't do some of the stuff fighters can, but they're still really powerful, really solid. More expensive, but then they're more durable and have more weaponry. And here's the Lamprey. So this was a pretty sweet add-on to the World of Silent Death, and it was an early add-on. And then they did a couple others. The Night Watch is a faction in Silent Death that simply goes after the bugs. So that's a quick look at this book. I'm going to go ahead and change over now and show you some of the ships as painted by my buddy Mike. So I'll be right back. Okay, and here are the various Nightbrood ships. Now, not all these came in the package. I bought a couple of these, but I'm putting them all out here. Just to give you an idea of what Nightbrood ships look like. My buddy Mike painted these. He painted these kind of as a fleet. So there you have a good look at it. I love how these ships came out. And the idea is they're supposed to look organic, because they are organic. And in this one, he painted a slightly different color, which I like. That's the upside down. There's the right side up. So they're supposed to look alien. Again, think Kasha's ship in Babylon 5. That's really what these things are. And they also had in the box set, which I forgot to mention, a bunch of punch-outs, counters and such. And I did punch these out because at the time I didn't have many ships. So I'll just show you a smattering of what these were. So these are very Traveler-like. And they would show different things in the ship. And you can use them also to say, okay, this ship's been hit by a spore mine. This one's been hit by a borer. That sort of stuff. So again, even though that we're going to be seeing a new version of Nightbrood as the first offering of the new Silent Death, I still have the old version. We've tweaked the rules a little bit in our game. Maybe if I do a future bat rep involving Nightbrood, I'll go into a little bit of that. We didn't tweak it much. It's just a few minor adjustments. But anyway, that's it for today from page 121. I hope you liked what you saw. If you did, please like and subscribe. Leave any comments below. And I'll see you next time.